Trenton later.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be. All because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan. It is so good to have a full house here. By the way, I'm going to ask the attorneys later on, apropos that last ad, if you're responsible for the deceased being deceased, do you still have to pay the property taxes on that? Well, we'll get back to that later. I don't know. See, this show makes me think, and I hope it does you as well, with us being as provocative as we are. Well, we are joined with our full complement of people. Today, we have public relations specialist and former Free Press reporter Darci McConnell. We have president of BME Consulting and former director of Wayne County Public Services Department, Beverly Watts. We have our troika of lawyers who will hopefully skirt the answer to that question that I asked. Joel Sklar, Bill Seikaly, and Steve Fishman. We have labor and community activist Barb Ingalls, veteran journalist Nancy Derringer, and of course, co-founder of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel. We had a bit of a debate this week, not quite Robert's rules and parliamentary procedure, but nonetheless, I suppose, far more entertaining. Allan, why don't we show the videos first before we get everybody's perspectives?
All right, let's see here.
Unlike the first presidential debate back in June, this time the Democratic candidate was able to walk out to the stage without pausing for a nap.
Even Nickelodeon had a debate feed where every time Trump screamed about eating dogs, he got slimed.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
Well,
oh no, she didn't.
No, she didn't. Wow. Invite her on the show.
That's her
I
YouTube
think,
show. Yeah.
I think that's some definite bad blood. I never thought in my wildest dreams I would see Megyn Kelly as the anti-hero, but okay.
I'm just curious about
My job
I have the
is
right
done.
to criticize Taylor Swift based on what? Her singing ability?
Well, they.
And I love that Trump says, I like, what's his name, Mahomes'
wife.
Wife better.
Brittany.
And I'm like, well, I don't think I'd pay anything to see her. I mean,
First we had to figure out who she was, but okay, yeah. No.
So, thoughts about the debate overall?
I mean, I love to use the word pummeling, so I just want to start there. I actually was tepid about her doing this because I figured he's going to lie through the whole thing. It's, what's the value in this? And as somebody who's covered politics and works in politics, it's very hard for me to say why, like, anti-debate. But I can eat crow here. I'm happy to eat crow because she got inside his head. She was brilliant when she talked about him and race. And, there's a nice betting pool on whether she was close to saying MF at one point. So I just thought it was fantastic.
You could see it.
This,
you could see it in her mouth.
like she was
You could
teeing
see
it up
those
for that.
words. We know that look. We know that.
So Darcy, basically what you're saying is that the performance was by Kamala Harris. You started it.
No, I agree a little with Darcy. I was a little nervous To be honest, I had at least 4 different people just texting me because I was afraid to, watch. Because let's be honest, it wasn't going to be an equal playing field. She could have did something and said something, crazy, like, eating the birds or whatever. She could be saying, eat whatever, and it's going to be blown up, more so. And she would have got it much worse than Trump was. But I was pleasantly surprised. And I knew she would do a great job just with her background. But it was so much attention on that. I'm really surprised they didn't really bring up how much older he looked. This is a big topic when he was with Biden. But I mean, he looked kind of older to me,
I think he did something to his hair. I think he actually got a piece instead of that, comb around.
Yeah.
I read somewhere that he got his prep from one of the people that helped him with his prep was Tulsi Gabbard. And they told him, and she told him not to like argue back, but to just sort of listen. And so instead he did his face thing, which is bonkers. It's cuckoo bananas to watch his face when he does his things, because he was like,
well, but I noticed he would look at her a lot. It's something he didn't
all
look
over
at her.
him.
Yeah, he wouldn't look at her really.
Like,
Joe.
She never looked at her.
She made the case that Biden couldn't. I mean, that's why she was the appropriate candidate, and that's why it was appropriate for Biden to step aside. She was a prosecutor. She sounded like a prosecutor. She was articulate. She took people back to some simple concepts and built on those. The fact that Trump didn't look at her, to me, is amazing. What a coward.
Right.
He's so scared of her. I mean, I saw new Trump faces I've never seen before. And there was one that was bright-eyed that I'd never seen. He was truly, he was shaken by her. I think she did everything she needed to do to establish herself as a fair presidential candidate. I think he did everything he could do to destroy that concept with him. I mean, Steve, I don't know if this was the moment he completely broke down or lost it, but the dogs, cats, the crowd size is pretty damn close. That's insane. And although those who love him will love him, a lot of people are stepping away. I know people who are Trump supporters, God knows, and some aren't just going to vote. They're just stepping away. So,
well, RFK Jr. seems to have said, well, I think you lost the debate. By the way, Joel, Bright Eyes, I think, is what Zara called Charlton Heston in Planet of the Apes. So just to inform. Yeah, Bill.
Yeah. First of all, I mean, it was a fun debate to watch for a change. I really enjoyed it. I thought Kamala missed some opportunities, but made no mistakes at all. And as somebody who tries cases, that's your first obligation. You don't want to make any mistakes. You'd like to not miss any opportunities, but you never want to make a mistake. I think that goes to what Barb was talking about earlier. The commentary I think I liked the most was that she smoked them like a pack of cigarettes. But I think that the overall most interesting thing that I saw was immediately after the debate, when Taylor Swift not only endorsed him, but within 24 hours brought 330 people to a link to register to vote that she had connected with that. And what was the immediate response of Trump's genius pick for vice president, J.D. Vance, who said, "Oh, who wants to listen to a billionaire who doesn't have any connection with the people anyhow?" Exactly.
No self-awareness.
I can't pick this stuff up.
Anywhere
Right.
in
If I would have written this script, I would have never come up with this, guys. I'm not.
But we all know that Trump's not really a billionaire. He's like he's a multimillionaire, but
you'd be surprised by how many billions of dollars this guy has.
I'm a billionaire. I'm a billionaire. Yeah, I know.
So Steve, I know you watched it because it was available on non-cable television. So what did you think?
I thought that the thing that was most amazing to me, and nobody commented on it, and then I happened to read it in a column somewhere, either the Washington Post or the Times. Trump, when he was asked about January the 6th, if you listen carefully to what he said, he distinguished the people into two groups. There were the we, which was him and the insurrectionists, and then there were the they, and the they included the police officers. 140 of whom were injured in this thing. And it's amazing to me that a guy is so mentally disturbed. He's going to police unions. He's going to police officers asking for their support. And he called them they when describing them as opposed to he, Trump, and his insurrectionists. And when he said that, I was just like, are you fucking kidding me?
Well,
so that was the thing that I noticed the most.
But Steve, some of those unions are endorsing him.
Yeah,
I understand that. But my point being, I think, I don't know what the campaign's going to do, but I sure think it'd be a hell of a get one of the unions, the police union guys who are endorsing Kamala, show what he said, and then have maybe a commentary, and how, what are they, 2 minute long, 1 minute long commercials. But I think it'd be really, really powerful. It was astounding to me. He didn't realize what he was saying, I'm pretty sure, because he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about half the time anyway. But when he said it, I just remember going, are you kidding me? The police officers were the theys?
Well,
so that was what
the other thing was that he referred to Ashley Babbitt as like, this poor, unfortunate martyr. And, she was shot by an out of control police officer. Anybody who saw the video of that incident, she was the one who was out of control. I mean, she's at the head of this raging mob that is like coming through a window, and it's the last barrier between between the mob and the legislators. And he told them to stop. They had their guns out. The smart people who were holding her up there did fall back, and she took one in the neck, and that was the end of Ashley Babbitt, and no tears shed here. But I mean, you're right. He said the other thing, I just wanted to say one more thing, because I think there's been so much verbiage spilled about this debate. I feel like there's not a lot we can add to it at this point. But somebody said he never looked at her. Somebody else pointed out, and I didn't notice this either, he never said her name. He never said her name. He talked about Biden, but he didn't look at her, and he didn't say her name. And that to me is kind of like, I've got a friend who's a therapist, and we talk about this a lot, but I mean, that is about as narcissistic as narcissism gets. And so
when she walked across the stage to him, she grabbed his hand and looked him in the eye and said, Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Get it right. Yeah. That was great. But, I just want to say the words union and police do not belong in the same sentence. This is my new lifetime goal is to separate these two words, because, dear God, I can't handle it.
Correct, Layla. You're right. Apropos to what Bill was saying before, that Harris did repeat the now debunked talking point about the mass rapes on October 7th by Hamas, something that even the New York Times article was debunked and retracted. Steve.
I just looked up. Ann Farrell was asking are any police unions endorsing Kamala. A week ago, 101 police officers endorsed her publicly, and so that's the answer. Yes, there are police officers who recognize what this guy really is, that he's nothing but a leader of criminals.
By the way, Nancy, I am now inspired by you going to write a song called She Came In Through the Capitol Window.
Checked it by a silver spoon.
Yeah.
There you go. So
we're just hurting Bill here.
When it comes to endorsements, it looks like former Vice President Dick Cheney has endorsed Harris. Nikki Haley has ripped J.D. Vance on childcare. And the only other still surviving former Republican President George W. Bush says he's not endorsing anybody. That's so is this, and I believe I also saw his Attorney General, former Attorney General Alberto Gonzalez endorsing Kamala Harris. So is this the exodus that may help? Steve?
I saw Tim Miller on MSNBC yesterday, former Republican guy who's in the Never Trump group. And he said something that I thought was very interesting. He's thinking that these people don't necessarily have the balls to do anything, but sometimes it can be like the Temptations used to sing about the snowball rolling down the side of the snow-covered hill. He wasn't saying it would happen, but he sounded a little bit hopeful that maybe as more people do it, maybe Mitt Romney would be the next one. Bush obviously isn't going to do it, but I could see it happening. I think a lot of these people look and they say, what's going to happen to me if I do this. You know, I'm going to get deluged with, like all the former Republicans are getting deluged with things. Some of them are afraid physically, some of them are afraid of costing them money. But his point was a lot of the people, like Dick Cheney, for instance, their careers are done. They've got enough to live on, I'm sure, and they'll take that chance. Hopefully, if we get lucky, more and more of them will do it in the next 60 days.
Alan, you've been eerily quiet about this. How have you felt about the debate?
The debate, I would say, you know, it's interesting. I don't think she's going to get a lot of bump from the debate, but she had to do it to show that she was worthy of being on the same stage. She not only did that, accomplished that, but she also showed that she can stand up to a bully. People talk about, you know, there's going to be Putin and Kim Jong-un or whatever, and Trump's as big a bully as any of them, and she stood up to them. So I think she proved that she had to do it. I think she shouldn't do another debate. I think, as Chris Christie said, she can't do any better than she did. She can maybe do as good or worse.
Trump doesn't want one anyway. He's already
But she's goading him, and I worry that he'll finally say, "All right, let's do it."
But Nancy, that's because he won. Nancy, didn't you see the memo?
One of my favorite. What? One of my favorite Don Cheadle roles is when he was in Out of Sight, which was that great Elmore Leonard adaptation set. Yes, exactly. Partially set in Detroit. And when he's making his last speech before he gets shot to death, he says something like, in a situation like this, a man might be tempted to bitch out. And I think that Trump has totally bitched out on facing her again. He wouldn't be able to. I mean, he wouldn't be able to hold it in. She's on the verge of calling him a motherfucker. He's on the verge of saying much worse. And we all know what he wants to call her and what he does call her.
I want to make a prediction here. I'm hesitant to do it because I've been wrong so many times. But I predict he will. I predict she's going to take a fairly significant bump in the polls, and he's not going to have a choice but to do it. But as for Christie's admonition, by the way, I wouldn't take Chris Christie's advice to any Democrat anytime, anywhere, any place. But I disagree. She can do better. She can do even better than she did by simply allowing him to continue to do what he did, by continuing to talk. So I think that she should bait him. I think she's right. The American people deserve to have other debates. I think that will resonate with the American people. I think when the numbers start to go up, he will feel like he has to, and this guy has no self-control. I also just want to point out that one of his advisors, this Laura Loomer, who is a real nutcase, we can talk about her some more later, I'm sure, was criticized by
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Well, that is amazing.
So quiet.
For being a racist.
Yeah.
I think we have video of that, Alan. But you know, Bill, there was a former Republican congressman from Virginia on CNN last night who was trying so hard to deflect the conversation from this on Anderson Cooper's show, saying, "Why are we talking about her?" And they're like, "She was on the plane." Can you get into Trump's mind? Do you think? Can you say that he was influenced by her, Nancy?
Oh, that guy, he's so full of shit. Yeah, he's like, yeah. But she's not only on the plane. Now, the rest of you are not the Twitter addict that I am, and I apologize to
thanks God,
because he knows what this is, what this leads to. But there's a pretty robust Twitter theory running around that they're actually like, you know, he and Laura, you know, Melania is like, she's basically they're essentially separated.
She's checked out.
Melania lives in
like an Amish barn raising for him. There's no fucking way. You know, come on.
Exactly. And that Laura Loomer is probably exactly the kind of woman who would be with that man without any clothes on. So there you go. But I mean, the idea
my lunch. Oh my God.
The idea that Laura, it seems pretty clear to me that several of the things that he said at the debate came right from her mouth into his ear. I mean, the eating pets thing, you know, a couple of others. He's just this.
The fact that he won.
Whoever, what was they say this about a bad manager? whoever is the last person to talk to them is the most important person in the room, you know, because they can be convinced of anything. That's never been more the case than it is with Donald Trump. And you heard this all during the first administration. You know, the Reince Priebus was unable to keep people out of the Oval Office. He loved that chaos of people running in and out of the office and handing him stuff and making him feel important and all this stuff. And, you know, I think she's just the last person to talk to him. And if it's pillow talk, it's extra powerful. So
there are two schools in. First of all, Allan, do we have like one of those emergency broadcast network things? Because I think a few of us threw up in our mouths, so that could like help us.
I need to go brush my teeth.
But in all seriousness,
we do have.
Who ate all the gabagool?
There are at least two schools in Springfield, Ohio, that are closed today because of threats to the schools. This has just gone far over the top when it comes to the demonization, including people like that squirrel that Trump pardoned, Dinesh D'Souza, who's been spreading this on social media. Allan.
I was watching, I think it was on CNN yesterday, they were doing a report from there saying these Haitian people, the city of Springfield had said we've got manufacturing jobs. These Haitian people who had come legally to this country have taken jobs. They've established a community there that, you know, they left the impression that there were buses dropping off and people are wandering around homeless, grabbing geese and cats and stuff, and it's anything but that. And the Haitians are freaking out. They're like, this is insane.
Actually, I met one of these Haitians just a couple of weeks ago. He's connected with my law partner. He helped my law partner's kids adopt, and he's there, and he was in town. And his position is he loves these people. They love the Haitian community. This is one of the best things he's ever seen. He's a very articulate, wonderful guy. And his position was so in opposite of everything you heard by Trump. And they're not here illegal. I mean, that's the real criminal statement that he made, is that they're illegals. They're not here illegally. They came in for a reason. This guy works.
A lot of them didn't even come directly from Haiti. A lot of them came up from Miami, which has always had a large Haitian community. Right. So, you know, yes, that's exactly right.
It's such straight up racism, and it falls under the category of when you're with people and you go by a Chinese restaurant and they go, you'll notice there's no cats around here. And you know, and the proper response to that is shut the fuck up.
Exactly.
Right? But it won't. It will never go away. And now this is something that I feel sorry for the kids.
And it's a huge insult, you know, to any group of people, especially people of color, but the Haitian community, especially in Springfield and other places, who are contributing positively to the community. I mean, and that's what's disheartening to me, because when you look at constantly, repeatedly, the former president and his VP, selected one, making these outrageous, you know, outlandish statements. And then you still look at these polling numbers if you believe them, because it says a lot. We know who Trump is, but it says a lot about us. Seriously, no joke, as Americans. And that's what's bad.
His running mate is one half of the Senate caucus for the state. I mean, J.D. Vance is promoting this, even though it's a city within his own state. So, well, now we have here in Michigan it seems to be the prospect of a crowded ballot. The Michigan Supreme Court has said that RFK Jr., Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I know, Nancy, you don't like him called RFK or Bobby too. And also
just call him Croaky. You know, that's what Trump calls him as soon as he walks out of the room. Hey, get a load of Croaky over there. So
like
go
Croaky.
Well, Croaky and Cornell West will remain on the November ballot. How do you think that's going to affect Trump and Harris?
I think RFK being on there are, you know, he's got on his website right now, it says a vote for Trump is a vote for Kennedy. And I think as long as his name is on the ballot, people would prefer who preferred him are going to vote for him instead of Trump. And I think that'll be I think it's a disadvantage for Trump, and it's probably beneficial to Harris. And that's why they've been fighting so hard to keep his name on the ballot. Besides that, I think they would have to reprint ballots if, so.
Actually, geeking out again, I read these opinions.
Thank you.
And I think that I think it was fascinating. I think that the Court of Claims opinion, I'm blanking on the judge who wrote it, but he did a good job. And one of his introduction was, look, elections aren't games. Kennedy had two roads to the getting on the ballot in Michigan. He could have gotten 5% of the signatures of the people who voted in the last presidential election. Couldn't do that. Or he could have gotten a minor party to nominate him and accepted that nomination. He did that, got the National Party. What was interesting was that they opposed him removing his name. He accepted their nomination. I think it's really important to understand that he is not entitled to play games with the system, and that's exactly what he's doing. He accepted the nomination, and then he wanted to withdraw it for the benefit of some other party, and the party who nominated him said, we don't want him off. And then he waited 4 months to appeal until literally the ballots were being printed. So I don't think this was a tough decision. I don't think that there was any error in it. I was amazed the detail of the Republicans on the Michigan Supreme Court who wrote a dissent, who must have spent weeks before the case ever got there preparing that opinion. But this wasn't, from a legal point of view, heaven forbid we should stick to the law when Trump's involved, but from a legal point of view, this wasn't a close call.
Well, it looks like he's going to be in more legal trouble because the White Stripes, they're suing Trump for improperly using their song Seven Nation Army in his campaign without their permission. So let's see how that plays out.
So essentially, Bill, let me, if I can understand, since I'm so glad somebody read those, because I was thinking, I was counting on you because I know you're the.
No, Steve read them before me.
Okay. Oh yeah.
But so essentially what they're saying is, you can't play games. You cannot play games with our electoral system. If you didn't want to be on the ballot under the natural law party, you should never have accepted the thing. And it doesn't matter. No backsies, essentially, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Now, it would have been interesting to see. I mean, the Supreme Court left a little room about. We might have decided this differently if he would have raised the legal issue the moment that he made the decision to withdraw, but he didn't. He waited 4 weeks. He deprived the Natural Party of having any ability to nominate somebody else.
Right.
And so he played this game. Think about, heaven forbid that we should think about Trump being involved in any conspiracies, but think about the ability to engage in those kind of conspiracies, taking up minor party ballots and then withdrawing from them.
Right. Sure. Exactly.
It's a game you shouldn't be allowed to play.
Yeah.
Is that what Laura Loomer said, Bill?
Laura, by the way, Laura Loomer, I had a brain fart earlier. It got into a urinating contest with Lindsey Graham, who said something this paradigm of liberalism, who had said something about he should stay away from her. She wrote back, "Don't listen to him. He's not loyal. He's just a rhino. And he's gay and afraid to come out of the closet."
Right.
And you notice that Trump keeps her around.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that I do think that there is some potential for impact to Harris because you still have this cadre of the uncommitted folks. Stein was courting those folks here this past week. So I think there will be some impact. It won't be.
Darci,
it won't be Perot-esque or any of that kind of stuff, but it will have some bite.
She's in town right now. She's in town.
With endorsement.
Who's in town?
She's in town right now for Jill Stein for the Arab Con. There is a convention going on, and as Layla said, Jill Stein is on the ballot here in Michigan. 11% of Muslims in the Metro Detroit area have said in a poll they're voting for Trump. 40% say they're voting for Jill Stein. So I don't know as far as numerically how much that's really going to shift, or if some of the polling more broadly has factored that in. But these are sizable percentages that are there.
I just want to say something. I'm glad that you have this comment up right now, Michael Pappas. I mean, Darcy, when you were talking about the undecided, like, who is undecided? Who is still undecided in this race? Are there truly undecided people, or are they just people who like to have reporters calling them up after every significant event? Oh, come on! You just have to remember
that I'm undecided what I'm having for lunch after this. So,
I mean, for them,
you have to remember that there are people who don't support Trump but have trouble supporting Harris, for example. There are people who were not, enthusiastic.
The double haters, the so-called double haters.
And then I mentioned the folks that aren't committed because they're concerned about the policy issues, right?
Right.
As it relates to.
Yeah.
I think the Arab community is very torn. And back in March when I was working on a story for the Washington Post, and I spent time at a mosque where there were people who were saying, some were saying, we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll change my mind. Back then it was Biden. But there are those who said there's no way I'm going to vote for Biden and maybe Trump, but I'm not sure if, which is really an absurd thing to vote for Trump in that situation if you're concerned about the war. But I think it opens up for, almost which third party candidate do I vote for or do I not vote?
Yeah.
Bill. I mean, I listened to this debate carefully on this issue, and Lila's on. She's a friend of mine, and I know she feels much the same. And I have this unique position, being a Palestinian and being married to a Jewish woman. The Palestinian issue, that what's going on in Gaza, is incredibly important to me, and so I look at a lot of these things through the lens. Here's what I discerned: Trump has no moral compass at all. There's a shocker none of you realized. And his view on foreign policy issues, is like Ukraine and like Gaza, is it's in America's interest to end the war. And I don't give a shit what happens to people after that. I think personally that's even more dangerous for Palestinians. Secondly, I want to point out that, like it or not, these elections are binary choices. Jill Stein's not going to get elected. Cornell West is not going to get elected. Robert Kennedy, thank God, is not going to get elected. So the question becomes, if you want to make a difference, is there a difference between these two candidates? At least Harris talked about a two-state solution. At least she said, I tended to believe her, that what's going on in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank is not acceptable. How you conduct a war is important, and she seems to me to have a moral compass. Now, I have dear family and friends who disagree with me. I have a niece who had a sign made that said "F them both." She's not interested, given what their positions have been on Palestine. But I think that to walk away from that issue, to have that kind of litmus test and run the risk of Trump getting elected, is to create a situation in which some in the Israeli government are going to find the final solution, and that the solution is to not have the Palestinians to worry about it anymore.
Trump will let his good friend Bibi do whatever he wants, and he'll just look away. He
worships guys like Bibi. He thinks Bibi is one of his heroes, and that is the most dangerous thing I could ever imagine.
Yeah,
well,
it is one of the many reasons I'm going to support Kamala.
I think Bibi, it goes in the category with Putin, Kim Jong-un, as people, strong men who manipulate Trump, and Trump pretends to be like, I'm buddies with them, I can stand up to them, but he basically acquiesces to everything they want.
He's their little
Alan, why don't we go to a commercial right now?
I was just thinking the same thing.
Neighborhood beautification. That's very important to Detroit. It's very important to block clubs, organizations, and people who live in the community. We got started with 2 lots and a vision of a treehouse center. Because if we can take these blighted lots, Detroit give us grants to be able to do something with them that the community wants, it's a plus because we're bringing our neighborhoods back to where we want them to be, where they should be, all because I live in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabria, your Wayne County Treasurer. If you're living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, the probate process can be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. Contact us at 313-224-5990 or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. We're here to help.
Now, Bill had made a prediction earlier, but Bill's not the only one who makes predictions out there. Michigan Republican State Representative Matt Maddock has predicted that Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson will be prosecuted and convicted if Trump wins because she's one of those election cheaters. Which one of our esteemed troika is going to represent Secretary Benson when she clearly is going to need it?
Oh, Steve has to weigh in on this one.
We won't be in line. The number of people who will want to represent her for free will be long and esteemed. I'd be happy to be in that group, but
would it be like the AG's office?
I will draft mean tweets making fun of Matt Maddock and his wife and all of their friends.
The equivalent of amicus.
Yeah, and that I'll do that pro bono. So there you go.
So it's interesting. We have a viewer says that as a Democrat, that LGBTQ and Palestine are not on the radar. I think that this is one of the realities, it seems, from polling that for many Democrats, at least LGBTQ, which traditionally has been a Democratic issue, interestingly not brought up, I think, by Vice President Harris in the debates, and Israel-Palestine are not as broad as in the electorate as it seems. Joel?
Yeah, my guess is because there's an existential issue at play here about democracy itself. And I think that's the paramount issue for this nation, is we want to be a democracy. We want to maintain the institutions that have made us a great country. And I think that's the overwhelming feeling that people have. So particular issues you may not like, but the overarching theme is we got to get rid of Trump. We have to hopefully humiliate him and humiliate those who side with him so they are gone or they're diminished. And we need to bolster Harris because we're bolstering democracy and the survival of the nation itself. So that's the overarching issue, which is why those particular issues may not resonate as much as they otherwise would.
But there's one group that we seem to be overlooking, and that's young people. I mean, historically, the parties have kind of, shunned young people because they couldn't predict what they were going to do. But, a lot of the school shootings and some reforms in how they can participate. There has been an uptick in young people participating, and they are very active and vocal in these protests. And I do think that, I don't know what the balance was in the polling, but I think they're more concerned about that issue than maybe some of the older voters.
Well, Darcy, another issue, I mean, that is of concern that we're seeing in polling, particularly to young people, and you see this also represented in some of the ads, is abortion. And in Florida, it turns out that the state police has actually been knocking on doors, questioning people if they signed an abortion rights amendment petition. Governor DeSantis has defended this under the aegis of looking for fraudulent signatures.
Oh, fuck that guy. Jesus God. Are you kidding me?
Actually, Nancy, no, but you shouldn't wish that on anybody.
Yeah, let his little ballerina skirt wearing wife do that. That's amazing. But,
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is he has claimed that there was a group that submitted, although he hasn't named the group, could be Haitians from Springfield, Ohio at this rate.
With cats and dogs.
And they're working with
maybe,
House, right? Okay.
apparently signatures on behalf of dead voters. So, but this idea of the use of law enforcement to go around and go beyond surveilling, but showing up at doors to check.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. But you know, people want to live in Florida. That's just unbelievable. But but believable too.
Steve,
I think that the thing that comes through more than anything in all of these states where they're trying to do all these different things to keep the issue from being decided by the public is that they all know that if it's decided by the public, it's going to be just like Kansas, just like Nebraska, and just like if you had it in New York or California or anywhere else. Women have had enough of this crap, and it doesn't matter if they're in a, quote, red state or a purple state or a blue state. So if they really believed in democracy, if DeSantis and his ilk really believed in democracy, why would they object to this being on the ballot? What other reason can there be other than that, hey, we're going to lose? That's what they object to. It's 62%, 58%, 65%, whatever it's going to be. They're going to lose in every single state. And that's the thing that to me is just so obvious. All the rest of it is just a bunch of crap. That's what they're afraid of. The vote, which is what they're afraid of in everything these days, you know.
Well, Steve, maybe they have realized that there's more demographics in Florida than the Golden Girls, and that, you know, abortion might actually be germane to them. So, yeah. Darcy.
I was just going to say that, you know, in addition to all the laws they pass across the country to suppress the vote, you know, this shows that there's no floor. I mean, you're going to get the law enforcement involved. I mean, you know, we heard about the robocalls, there really is no floor in terms of trying to impede people that they perceive not to be their base from voting and participating.
What do you think that means about what happens if Trump loses the election?
Say that again. I don't understand the question.
What does that predict in terms of what would happen? What will happen when Trump loses the election? I want to stay that positive.
Are you mean like will we see January 6th again? Is that what you're asking?
Not just January 6th, but January 6th endorsed and supported and perpetuated by these governors and local elected Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, hopefully these Republicans
and a Supreme Court in its current composition.
Hopefully they'll gain, and I won't use that word, but they'll get their strength back to get the common sense back, and they'll be able to rebuild their party when they have more of them that stand up to this rhetoric. That's hopefully what they'll do is get courage. That's what I'm hoping.
Did anybody see the story in, I think it was the Washington Post yesterday or day before yesterday, about how Trump and his mouthpieces, Laura Loomers, and you know all these people have started to kind of talk about how this assassination attempt, you know, there's much more than we are being told about it. And again, it's like a dog whistle to the crazy people to, you know, to take up arms and you know, start shooting somebody. I mean, there's even Melania, that old whore. She's, you know, they're teasing out.
She's young. She's young.
You see, by the way, talk about inappropriate.
Nancy's fired up today.
Well, they're teasing out, you know, these little 20-second videos of her talking about her book that's coming out in October, and she's saying, the attempted on my husband's life was very upsetting, and she says, I can't help but think that there is more than we are being told about this. So, I mean, just, you know, it's like
Nancy, I got to stop you right there. She's Slovenian, not Croatian. Get the accent right.
Well, is that from your vast BBC library on how to talk like people from all over the world?
I was having as civil as I could make it, an argument with an old coworker yesterday about all this. And one of the things she said is that she said that she admires Trump because it's like the playbook. He left a wonderful life to selflessly run the government, and he's not a politician, that he didn't take any money, and he got shot in the head. He got shot in the head and is still at it. And it's like, but you're a gun owner lady, you know perfectly well that he
something
happened that day, but he did not get shot in the ear with an AR-15 because the whole
has not been
I think there's more validity to the rumor that Paul is dead. But okay, Alan.
I love when people say, "Oh, he didn't take any money or whatever." He made so much money off the Secret Service. Every weekend he was going to one of his places. The Secret Service, all his staff had to get rooms and stuff like that. All the Saudis or whatever came to stay at his hotel down the street on Pennsylvania Avenue. That guy cleaned up, and he never separated himself from his business. He was supposed to, put himself, in arm's length from the business. Was total bullshit. The guy made a shitload of money off the government.
Mercifully, at least the old U.S. post office building on Pennsylvania Avenue is no longer in his hands. Well, one more thing I would like to talk about is that former U of M football players. Who do we got here? Denard Robinson and
Braylon Edwards.
Who's the other? Braylon Edwards are suing the NCAA and the Big Ten Network for wrongful NIL name, image, likeness use, and say that they actually have not been compensated enough for the misuse of their images. This, of course, is something that I never imagined, back in the 80s when I was going to U of M, that this would even be an issue, but apparently it is now. How much merit is there to the case,
Fishman?
You don't remember that in the 80s? You must not remember the 60s when we got $5 a day when we went on the road to play basketball. So it's a little bit different with NIL. I don't know how much.
$5 you could have paid for the whole team at McDonald's, man.
Well, the funny thing is we did, but what we would do is we'd go into McDonald's, we'd order the food, and then when the bill came, we'd run out. But that was only in Ann Arbor. We didn't try to do that in Iowa City or Champaign, Illinois. We only did that in Ann Arbor, where they would never guess that 5 guys 6'8" and a little guy possibly played basketball, right? Anyway, I don't know anything about that stuff. I think Acho's the lawyer, isn't he, Bill? I think, and he knows what he's doing. He's a good guy. I got to believe, in all honesty, and Bill and Joel could chime in. In general, these guys don't file lawsuits and waste their time on it if they don't think there's merit to it. So my guess is, you got some pretty big stars. Braylon Edwards, Denard Robinson, I think Sean Crable, and can't remember who the fourth person is, but pretty good player also. I can't imagine he would be filing this lawsuit if he doesn't think there's something to it.
By the way, I have to check with
one other thing, and my other members of the Troika know this. Almost every lawsuit that's been filed, going back to Ed O'Bannon at UCLA when he first sued about them using his, before there was NIL, every lawsuit the players have won. They win every time because the NCAA really, whether it's the NCAA, the Big Ten Network, they really don't have much of a leg to stand on. They're treating these guys like they're able to use their name and their image and likeness, and they're not entitled to any money.
Actually,
you could get a lid in those days.
I have a hard time disagreeing with what Steve's saying. It's not just the IP issue, the intellectual property issue. I mean, they sometimes act like the 13th Amendment doesn't exist. This is slippery in many regards. So I agree with Steve. There's a reason they lose these cases. And I think based on only what I've read, I haven't read the actual complaint, there seems to be a lot of merit. I would think this case is probably going to get settled, not tried. They just simply don't have a right to treat these people like they treat them.
Well, I am going to check with the Washtenaw County prosecuting attorney, Ellie Savitt, to see what the statute of limitations is for a dine and dash at a McDonald's in Ann Arbor.
Right, on-air confession.
Right.
As Fishman always says.
It was 1968, so unless the statute of limitations is 56 years, it's 6 years in case you care, unless you kill somebody, which as far as I know, even the food was shitty, but none of us died.
As Fishman always say, when you got the person's voice actually saying it, you got a case.
That's it.
Here, Saeed, I've got this amusing little encounter.
That is charisma and the ability. Can anybody in a bazillion years and a million alternate universes imagine Trump being that charming and funny with anybody? No. Forget it.
I really and genuinely hope that someday we get to quit making fun of Joe Biden and recognize. I don't mean but I mean in general. I think that Joe Biden exceeded my expectations by far. I think he was, while everyone was making a big fuss, he was working. You know, he wasn't making stupid comments. He wasn't out there doing this little dance. He was working. You know, and he got old, and he should have stopped in the first and made an easier transition. I don't think we would be this far ahead, honestly, if we had gone through the proper channels. But I really, and as a union person, my pension was secure. I mean, I can think of a million reasons to love Joe Biden, but I really hope that we stop.
No, Barb, I totally agree with you on that one. When you look at his administration in the 4 years, whether you like him or not, he's accomplished a lot. More so than a lot of presidents in the past. When you look at some of the things, his initiatives that he got accomplished in 4 years.
Because he was a senator, you know, and he knows how he's a decades-long veteran of, you know, the U.S. Senate. He knows how deals get done. He knows how work gets done.
So before we go, I was going to say, I don't know if there's a president since Lyndon Johnson who knew how to work Capitol Hill the way he did. You know?
Yeah. Well, he's also Lyndon Johnson. I wish Doris Kearns Goodwin would be around long enough to write Biden's biography because I'd love to read that. Biden has always been the best at retail politics. Nobody is better at walking into a restaurant and sitting down with people. I think if you look at that tape again, and I've seen it a couple of times, I think that guy would have voted for Biden after that event.
Alan,
I would has some talent in that area too. So,
Alan, Bill, do you know something we don't know about Doris Kearns Goodwin? I mean, ouch.
I mean, she's
I'm reading her most recent book, which is an unfinished love story, an autobiography of the 1960s about her husband. And
how is that book?
It's great. I highly recommend it. As a guy who was very interested in the Kennedy-Johnson relationship, there's things in there that I never knew, and I'm geeky enough that I went to often to listen to the tapes of Johnson calling senators to try and get the vote on the Civil Rights Act.
Is anyone else enjoying this tour of Steve Fishman's home that we're getting here?
I want to see that happen.
I think his house. I think after that, I realized his house is named Vertigo.
I thought we were on an episode of Cribs.
Alan, I will say that if there was an example after LBJ of somebody who understood how to work Capitol Hill, it was probably Reagan's relationship with Tip O'Neill. That was pretty good. Well, I do want to end before we go to our last segment. I do want to reflect on the fact of the passing of really a giant, and that is James Earl Jones, passed away at the age of 93, University of Michigan graduate, a voice that anybody I'm sure would have loved to have had on their voicemail. That, Alan, has got to be the most the best picture without any mockery that you've ever posted of someone. So that and duly so for somebody of the stature. So any reflections about James Earl Jones' favorite role that he had?
Well, first of all, I've been a fan for a long time. There's too many things to name that I like. Of course, we should mention the fantastic narration of the U of M hype video. Maybe you can slide it in the show today. But I'm very fortunate that I got to see him on Broadway. I've only been to 2 Broadway plays, and he was in both. A Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with a stellar cast, and also the Gin Game with Cicely Tyson. So
he had to play Big Daddy, right? Who else could he have played in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof?
Well, he did Maggie the Cat.
Anyone, he could have played Maggie the Cat, exactly.
Yeah, and he still would have knocked it out of the park. Okay.
No,
anyone else?
Too many to remember. Yeah, he has so many memorable voices. That's too many to remember. But of course, Coming to America. Of course.
Yeah, walking into a barbershop.
Darth Vader,
so funny.
Darth Vader. Bill?
I'd say 2 things about James Earl Jones. One, him being in a movie made me watch it. I didn't care. Did he have some bad roles? Maybe. But if James Earl Jones was in a movie, I watched that movie. I don't think I missed any of them. That's number one. Number two, I don't know an attorney anywhere in this country who wouldn't do anything to have his voice as an attorney. I mean, it simply owned the atmosphere once he started speaking. So,
although it would have been a little bit weird to see, I would have loved to have seen him as Atticus Finch in a remake of To Kill a Mockingbird.
I just want to, I can't think of a James Earl Jones role that stands out other than the ones that have already been mentioned. But I do want to point out that this is a perfect example. I heard when they were doing the obits and appreciations earlier this week that he had been a stutterer and as a child, and he overcame it in part with a dedicated teacher who got him into reading poetry aloud, which led him into acting. Cool. And oh wow, okay,
nice, Darcy.
Very nice. But I just want to say that, there are people in this country who think arts education is a waste of money. And I am here to tell you that there are a bazillion stories like James Earl Jones's. And even if he had become a lawyer or a garbage man or something, that teacher was responsible for helping him overcome a speech impediment and, hooray for the arts. So there.
Nancy, I'll have to go with Terrence Mann in Field of Dreams and the villain in Conan the Barbarian. I mean, those were that was range. But look,
too
again,
close and made fun.
You should appreciate this. U of M produced James Earl Jones, William Shatner, Arthur Miller, and of course Ann B. Davis. And I wanted to throw in Alice, since
Steve
we
Fishman.
actually do have a 3x3 here. And Bill, you'd represent Alice.
Christine Lottie also. She was the commencement speaker at my daughter's graduation from the school.
Christine Lottie.
There.
Alan, let's go to last segment.
Downtown Detroit, Robert Wells, Schmuck of the Week.
So, by the way, I'm sure that we might have some overlaps, and that's okay. But if not, I've got some extras for you. Darcy, who's your schmuck?
Well, it's Captain Obvious is Vance and Trump, but I have a tie. One is the MSU Board of Trustees who were in charge from 2014 on, who decided that they would hide the details about Nassar, and and didn't act. Just horrific. And then I just like to call him Schmuck as Kevin Adele. Thank God you're retiring. You've just been a boil on our region, from everything from hiring the biggest misfits to how you've mistreated people. So it's a tie.
Mm-hmm. I have something to say, Kevin Adele. I think it was so interesting. 9:10 a.m. sort of had a reputation for hiring people either like disgraced from their job on the bench or felony convictions, and then he would hire them, and then they would do something unethical, and he'd be shocked, and he'd have to fire them.
And it's almost as though somebody wrote a story about that very situation in Deadline Detroit. Mm-hmm.
That's right, and they tried to bully. They tried to bully you.
They did. My comment to my friend was, if this means Mort Meisner loses a client, I'm all in. So,
all right, Steve.
Well, mine is a tie. I originally was going to have Jesse Waters and the rest of them from Fox News, who've been trying to somehow say that Trump did a fine job the other night, and the things that they say are so ridiculous that it's hard for me to believe they can look in a camera and say it. But I have to say, we've already discussed them. Ron DeSantis, what we read about with respect to the abortion referendum, he's at least tied that he may be my schmuck for the reasons that I said before. So that's where I'm at.
Okay, Beverly.
Yes, clearly mine, going back to the debate, is going to be Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House. He went overboard, declaring how the former president won the debate, and Kamala came off as a bad actor and a bad play. I mean, you're the Speaker of the House, and clearly I don't know what debate he was watching, but he truly is my schmuck of the week, just because, and schmuck, just because of the way he went overboard and saying, in his view, Trump won the debate hands down.
He may not be speaker for long, Beverly, because there's the budget vote coming up, and that's going to be divisive. So, be careful what you wish for. Okay, Joel.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and Laura Loomer. Two peas in a pod, fertilized in very shitty soil. But for obvious reasons, pushing. One, Laura Loomer is such a right-wing fanatic, insane person that the fact she has the ear of Trump is frightening. But these two are just of the same cloth. One, both absurd. So they're both my schmucks of the week. They deserve each other. I hope this cat fight continues.
Well, Loomer actually said about Kamala Harris that if she's elected, the White House will smell of curry.
Yeah,
I saw that.
Having been in the White House, it could be so lucky. But so let's see what happens with that. Okay, Barb.
Nolan Finley. The spineless Nolan Finley, who wrote an editorial saying that what's wrong with getting rid of the Board of Education?
No, the Department of Education.
Oh, the Department of Education.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Right. Thank you very much. And you can almost see the skinny hand of Betsy DeVos up his spine. I have a good recipe for cats. I just want to say you got to render it down. But no, Nolan does it again. I'm sorry.
What kind of wine goes with cat? Is it like a red or a white?
I would think white, a nice, delicate white. Yeah. For the fluffy cat.
Oh man, Bill, get us away from that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I like to race to the bottom, but I can't find one below this. There are a number. John James comes to mind for proposing a bill that would give tax breaks to people who sent their kids to private schools. Have a personal interest there, Johnny? Yeah, I wonder if he has any personal interest. Not that he has two kids going to, I think, Cranbrook. Well, certainly Laura Loomer, for all the reasons we've said before, and Matt Maddox. We're going to convict Jocelyn Benson. God knows on what, and God knows on what evidence or for what reason. By the way, before the election occurs, she's committed fraud before the election occurred. This is fascinating to me. This is a man who, like everybody in public office, was sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States. Yeah. Enough said.
Yeah. Enough said.
I have a
Nancy.
little cat.
Yeah, go ahead.
Real quick. There's a comedian, Brian Kiley, talking about cats. He said we had a cat named Butter, and I think it got hit by a car, and we were mourning. And then years later, we got another cat that just looked exactly like the other cat, but we called it I Can't Believe It's Not Butter.
Okay, Allan found his way below the other level.
Yeah, but at least I didn't throw up in my mouth on that one. Thank you. Nancy.
Okay. Many of you probably received texts, urgings on social media, etc., to see this fantastic movie last summer that came out last summer called The Sound of Freedom, or just Sound of Freedom. And it was one of these, it was produced a biopic, or shall we say, about Mr. Tim Ballard, who allegedly goes south of the border and rescues children from sex trafficking. Well, in what is probably the least, shall we say, surprising news of the week, the New York Times dropped a story where many of the women that he would take along with him, he always said that he had to have a partner with him because it made for a more realistic story to tell the traffickers. The women describe a handsy sexual harasser. I'm just going to read one paragraph. Many of the women described in lawsuits and interviews similar initial interactions with Mr. Ballard. Then, once he won the women's initial interest, they said, he began talking graphically about sexual scenarios they might encounter based on his past experiences. In text messages with one woman filed as part of the lawsuit, Mr. Ballard asked about pubic hair waxing, what made her feel sexy, what her face looks like during an orgasm. He has said such messages were sent as part of his undercover persona. So, Tim Ballard, yet another conservative sex pest. You are my schmuck of the week.
Nancy, are you sure that wasn't when Tim was working at the EEOC in the 80s? Because, God, that sounds familiar. It's like, I think I remember hearing all that at a Senate confirmation hearing.
Yeah, really.
Back in the 70s.
All we need is the can of Coke. So, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Alan.
I'm going to pick, I did a story. It's on Deadline Detroit right now. It's sent, there's flyers that are being sent here in Detroit, and I'm sure in other major cities. And it's sent by the Americans for Consumer Protection, which is, there's no such thing, I think. But they're sending these flyers, and the flyers are saying, Democrats are coming for your menthols. And it's aimed at Black voters to be angry that the FDA and the Biden administration have been trying to move forward to ban menthol cigarettes, which are more addictive and are easier to get on, smoke. And so they're trying to pander to the Black community and the menthol cigarette smokers and all that. And it's really just horrendous. And it's so sneaky. And, I looked up online, there is no Americans for Consumer Protection. There is no group. There's a P.O. box in Virginia. I called the guy last night whose name showed up on there, and he said, no, I didn't have, I haven't worked in 15 years and whatever. But anyway, so.
That means we're going to have a lot of bonfires this weekend again.
Yes.
There you go.
You got it.
All right. So my schmuck of the week has to be none other than Elon Musk. Not only is he calling the Australian government fascist for their proposal that they're going to ban kids from some social media apps, which they consider to be dangerous for them, but right after the debate and right after Taylor Swift gave her endorsement to Kamala Harris, Elon Musk posted on his own, of course, platform, X, formerly Twitter, saying, "Fine, Taylor, you win. I will give you a child and guard your cats with my life." Apart from the absolute cringe factor of anything or anyone being inseminated by Mr. Musk again, I mean, this just seems to be. I mean, this should have been banned from his own site. But at least Travis Kelce was chivalrous enough to remind him that he's 6'5", plays football, and could twist him like a pretzel.
I think
that turned out to be true.
I think that turned out not to be true.
Yeah.
Which one?
That was the response from Travis Kelce.
Oh, well then,
okay,
well at least let's make it
too. So
let's make it aspirational. But the other schmuck that I have is actually a posthumous schmuck, and that is former advisor to George H.W. Bush, Lee Atwater, who we are now seeing the legacy of the normalization of his dreaded Willie Horton ad back in the 1988 election, with this kind of demonization of Haitian migrants and others, with the entire GOP marching in lockstep to try to find excuses for this occurring. Nancy,
if only there were a Detroit journalist with strong ties to the nation of Haiti who could rise in defense of that nation, and we'll just see whether that happens. And but we'll see. So
it's interesting the Don Rosenberg ads we keep saying. I used to be a supporter of Kamala, and then supposedly I was reading on Twitter, somebody wrote and said the immigrant they were talking about was in the U.S. legally under a special program, that he was arrested for not having a driver's license. He was fined and released, and they're trying to put that as it's just really shameful.
It's nuts. Yeah.
Wow.
All right.
We're
running over.
Well, thank you again for a wonderful roundabout of everything that's been going on this week, particularly around the debate and its many tentacles, which I'm sure we'll be talking about next week as well. Thank you, Darci McConnell. Thank you, Beverly Watts. Thank you, Barb Ingalls. Thank you, Joel Sklar. Thank you, Bill Seikaly. Thank you, Steve Fishman. Thank you, Nancy Derringer. And of course, thank you. And with the last word, always, Allan Lengel.
Drive home safely.
Drive home safely. I think that you were also pointing to Fishman's exit.
Yes. I knew I was waiting for him to start out.
Wow. Anything that happens that fast can't be that safe.
Wow. Wasn't it Ray
my
Stevens
mother
who's-
once warned me about that.
He
Wasn't it
adds
Ray-
a lot to the show. We should not
Wasn't it
penalize
Ray
him.
Oh no,
Stevens who
absolutely.
said- Wasn't it Ray Stevens who said, and they call him the Streak?
Yeah.
There we go. Streak Fishman. All right. Have a great weekend, everybody. Take care.
Don't forget it's Friday the 13th.